Good afternoon, dear tutor and classmates. I am Eliana Sofia Leal Lozada, and this is my work for the step 2 to establish theoretical foundation for designing teaching material. This is for the course Material Designs for Face-to-Face Environments. So let's start. Here I will talk about the principles and procedures of materials development for language learning. The author, Brian Tomlinson, mentions that materials should not be random creations from repertory nor fluffy clones of previously successful materials. This author proposed more or less 15 principles for the development of useful materials in the acquisition of a second language, but in this case we will concentrate on 6 important principles. The first one is exposed to the learning to language in authentic use. Here it's important to acquire the ability to use the language effectively because the learners need a lot of experience of the language being used in a variety of different ways for many purposes. It is a requirement for language acquisition that students are exposed to a rich, meaningful, and understandable input of the language in use. For these teachers, they must give a positive and meaningful access to the target language. The principles of materials development. The first one is materials contain a lot of spoken and writing text. The second, make sure that the languages the learning are exposed to is authentic for real situations. A teacher can consider that if the language is inauthentic because it has been written or reduced to simplify a particular language feature, then the learners will not acquire the ability to use the language typically or effectively. The third, make sure that the language input is contextualized. Contextualized means knowing more details about the character, the recipient, the relationship between the participants, the environment, the intention, or the results, so that the students understand better. And 4. Provide natural recycling of language intents and features. The author mentions the following examples for the creation and development of materials. First, text-free activities. The teacher reads a poem or a story or telling a joke or anecdote at the beginning of the lesson. And second, use extensive reading, extensive listening, and extensive viewing. Here the students are encouraged to ask questions about the text at any time and to return to read the text they have collected many times. The second one is help learners to pay attention to features of an authentic input the learners to the languages in authentic use. Feeling enjoyment, pleasure, and happiness, feeling empathic, being amused, being excited, and being stimulated are more likely to influence acquisition positively to the second language. The students need to be engaged both effectively and cognitively in the language experience. If the learners don't think and feel will experience the languages, they are unlikely to acquire any elements of it. The principles for this case are 3, which are it's important the potential for affective and cognitive thinking. This is achieved with interesting and creative tasks rather than a teaching point select for a syllabus, for example. Use of activities which get the learners to think about what they are reading or listening, to respond to it personally according to the text. And 3. Use of activities which get learners to think before, during, and after using the target language for communication activities. The example is text-driven approach, an holistic focus to think about when experiencing the text. For this principle, the author use is based on the fact that he begins with a potential use engaging in spoken or writing text, generating that his students active their minds and personal responses. Principle number 2. Provide the learners with opportunities to use the target language to achieve communicative purposes. Language learners need to be positive about the target language, feel that they are achieving something worthwhile. Students achieve this when they become emotionally involved in the learning process and respond by lodging, getting angry, getting sympathetic, feeling happy, feeling sad, in short, expressing their feelings. The principles are: make sure the text and tags are interesting, relevant, and enjoyable. If the text and tags are interesting, they will have a positive influence on the learning attitudes for the language and process in general. The second one, set achievable challenge. These challenges help to raise the learner's self-esteem when success is accomplished. And third, stimulate emotive response through the use of music, song, literature, art, text, etc. Personalizing the materials and making them controversial and provocative. A student can be generated to express their feelings instead of just analyze. They can use the target language in a positive way. And the example here is offer the students choices of text and tags to develop, consulting the topics that are interesting for them and would like to discuss. It can be trendy topics such as in the internet, Instagram, and travel around the world, talk about the increase in violence and teenage pregnancy, for example. The following principle mentions that teachers should provide opportunities to outcome feedback to learners. Here in L1 learning and use learning typically make use of mental imagining, for example, seeing pictures in their mind, or inner speech or emotional responses of connection with their own lives, of evaluations or predictions of personal interpretations. The inner voice is used. Something very important is the inner voice is used to give our own voice to what we hear and read, to make plans, to make decisions, to solve problems, to evaluate, to understand and control our environment, and to prepare outer voice utterance before saying or writing them. Therefore, it is concluded that L2 students should receive training to use visual image in the classroom and use their inner voice or inner speech to improve their learning, performance, and use of the target language. Here the principles of material development are: make use of activities which get learners to visualize and or use inner speech before, during, and after. The learners can be experiencing and use language. For this case, it could be writing or spoken text. And the second one is make use of activities which help the learners to reflect on their mental activity. To make students think, it is necessary to use mental strategies in different activities. The example of materials is create materials that encourage students to visualize, to talk to themselves in the inner speech, and to make connection with their life. For example, in activities that talks about a person's daily routine, first, the teacher can ask and visualize what is their own daily routine, and then they can express their feelings using the target language. That is the most important goal. Number 5. A shy impact in the sense that they are aroused and sustain the learner's curiosity and attention. Here the learners notice for themselves how a particular language item or feature is used. They are more likely to develop the language around it. And noticing is most salient when a learner has been engaged in a text effectively and cognitively and then returns to it to investigate its language use. Principles of material development. We had only two. The first one is use an experiential approach. This consists in applying an experience and think about it without focusing on a particular characteristic, then revisit and reflect in that same experience and pay conscious attention to the particular features. And the second, it is much more powerful to have the learners, preferably in collaboration, to make discoveries for themselves. Here the teacher can use the word with pairs for develop different activities. And the example of material is use a lot of languages around these materials in which the students experience a potentially engaging text, respond to it personally, and then focus on a particular feature of the text. In order to do this, we start thinking about an interesting topic. The teacher asks about a feature of the story, and analyze and reflect in gross the opinions that arise with these discoveries. And the last one principle develops the following idea. Learners need opportunities to use languages to try to achieve communicative purposes. And the communicative purposes generate a feedback of their participation and at the same time obtain meaningful and irresistible input from their interlocutors to clarify and elaborate new knowledge. And the principles of material development are 5. The first, provide many opportunities for the learners to produce languages in order to achieve intended outcomes, using language rather than just practicing a specific feature of it. Third, design output activities. These activities help learners to develop their ability to communicate fluently, accurately, appropriately, and effectively. 4. Make sure that the output activities are fully contextualized. Students need to respond to an authentic stimulus with specific recipients and a clear result. And 5. Try to ensure that opportunities for feedback are built into output activities and are provided for the learners afterwards. The example is materials in which students have to produce a text, which is a development from one they have just experienced. I found interesting the following activities that the author proposed that consist of design an improved version of a vehicle in a newspaper advert, and then to write the newspaper advert and perform a TV advert for their vehicle. I found interesting the following activity that the author proposed that consists of design an improved version of a vehicle in a newspaper advert and then to write to newspaper advert and perform a TV advert to their vehicle. In the next readings for this stat, we have the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. Council of Europe have played a decisive role in the teaching of so-called foreign languages by promoting methodological innovations and new approaches to designing teaching plans with a communicative approach. In this case, we have the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, self-assessment grid This chart had another name that is CESR and is useful to organize languages proficiency in 6 levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1 to C2, which can be regrouped into 3 broad levels, that is basic user, independent user, and proficiency user. That can be used filters to device according to the needs of the local context. In this table, as you can see, it is useful to guide teachers and students in the skill they develop in different subjects. Here we have the part of listening, reading, speaking, which have spoken interaction and spoken production, and writing, which mentions what is expected about you, and then you can self-assess your level of competence. For that, you have to read this chart and know if you are able to understand familiar words or you understand familiar names, if you can communicate in a simple and routine task, if you can connect phrases in a simple way, or you can express in a clear, well-structured text and expressing many points, of you don't have difficulty on understanding any kind of the spoken language like English or another one. These are the reference and that's all. Thank you so much for watching my video and be here. See you in the next opportunity. Bye.